Good morning. ABARAT here by Clive Barker. Early as shit. And it's cold as fuck. I had to turn the heat on this morning. What? Cold as fuck. But, chapter 23. The Man Who Made the Kid. And we start off with some art. Oops. I hope you have an amazing day. Or have been having an amazing day thus far. Okay. Chapter 23. The Man Who Made the Kid. The great moth, though it was certainly dead, did not fall from the sky like a stone. Its wings were so large that it spiraled down like a kite that had lost the wind. Candy held onto its thorax, praying aloud, "Please, God, help me!" But the words were snatched out of her mouth by the speed of their descent, which grew faster and faster. She caught a glimpse of what lay below. It wasn't bare rock, but it wasn't a featherbed either. It was a stretch of what looked like moorland, where here and there a few scattered trees. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, Mendelssohn's shape reached down around the body of the moth and began to shake her loose. Quite why he was doing this was beyond her. Perhaps he was simply trying to lighten the load. Whatever his reasons, they were his undoing. In his attempt to throw Candy off, he lost his own grip on the animal and started to pitch forward over the moth's head. In desperation, he snatched hold of the moth's antennae, but his body weight simply flipped the insect's whole cadaver over. It was now Shape who was starting to pray aloud for help, though he did so in a language Candy didn't understand. His pleadings were no more efficacious than Candy's had been. She heard him clawing his way up over the moth, each breath a sob, but he was lost. His pleadings became more desperate than ever. Then the wind gusted with a particular force, and he was carried away. Candy glimpsed him as he swept past her. He plunged out of sight through the darkened air, leaving her lying face up on the belly of the insect as it too plummeted earthward. The spread of the moth's wings slowed its descent, which is about the only good news about Candy's situation. She held on tight, anticipating a massive blow when they hit the ground. But she was lucky. The wind had carried the moth away from the rocks where Mendelssohn had fallen, and toward one of the copses. The insect's body landed on the canopy. Twigs and branches snapped, and the huge body threatened to continue its fall to earth, but the young trees had sufficient resilience to bear the moth's body up. Leaves flew into the air and came spiraling down on the top of Candy. She lay absolutely still, waiting for the last of the motion to subside. Then she gently rolled over onto her stomach and peered down through the creaking branches. The ground was still 20 feet below her, perhaps more. She needed to proceed with extreme caution, she knew, if she was going to get down to terra firma without doing herself harm. As it turned out, it wasn't too much of a problem. The trees presented her with an easy hand and footholds. Though she was still shaky from the last few minutes of high drama, she managed to clamber down to earth without any further incident. The first thing she did was to relieve Squiller of his duty by gently unknitting him from her head. The poor squid was trembling violently. She did her best to reassure him with soft words. "It's okay," she told him. "We're perfectly safe now." She would have to get him back to the water as soon as possible. Squiller has been serving her sight for an hour or more. She was surprised he was still alive. "No, ma'am. Absolutely no. Thank you." Drizzle sassy. She would have to get back. Now she was on the ground. She took stock of the situation. What place was this? Or more correctly, given what she was in the ABARAT, what hour? This dog's got a chapter 17 sock in her mouth like she's bougie or something. It's a $10 sock. Yo, bring it here. Bring me that. Bring it here. Come on, bring that here. It was dark here, darker than the Yevadim day, but not yet deep night. Her guess was that it was 10 o'clock in the evening, which she remembered from her lessons with Clive was the island of Ninnyhammer. There was a little chill in the air, and on the breeze from some distance away she could hear an orchestra playing some mournful music. She ventured to the edge of the little stand of trees to see if she could discover the source of the music, and she did so easily. As she peered out from the trees, 2 of the hunters set their balloons down gently, not 50 yards away from her, the floodlights on their gondolas illuminating the ground in every direction. Rather than step out into the light and make herself a potential target for hunters, she retreated into the cover of the trees again and watched while the events unfolded. First, she heard the sounds of the gondola doors being opened, and then, with a quiet hum, a set of steps emerged, so that these pampered hunters didn't have to jump the short distance from the doorway to the ground. The 3 men who emerged were all wearing identical clothes, high-colored gray suits and highly polished gray boots. The leader, to judge by the way the other 2 men fawned upon him, was not the oldest. He was a diminutive young man with a shock of orange hair that fell over his brow, and the perpetually narrowed eyes of one who was deeply suspicious of the world. The other 2, his bodyguards perhaps, were almost twice the size, and they instantly proceeded to survey the territory onto which their leader was wandering. Both carried guns. Finally, bringing up the rear of this little group was a black man so tall that he had to bend his head in order to get out through the gondola's doors. He wore a pair of small silver glasses, and he carried some kind of large electronic tablet, the screen of which gave off a pulsing glow that illuminated his face with light, sometimes white, sometimes turquoise, sometimes orange. He attended closely to everything the man with the orange hair said or did, and I got pages stuck together. And his long, agile fingers moved restlessly back and forth over the tablet, missing no detail of whatever his boss said or did as he set it down. The man with the suspicious eyes had already fixed his gaze upon the moth in the tree, and he approached the creature, talking as he went. "Have you ever seen any life form quite like this, Mr. Birch?" he said to the man in the silvered glasses. He didn't wait for a reply. "Doggett," Mr. Suspicion said, now addressing the larger of the 2 bodyguards. "You'd better get some grappling hooks and ropes so we can bring this thing down. I want it preserved for our collection." "It's as good as done, Mr. Pixler," Doggett said, and left the little company to get the work underway. Pixler, Candy said to herself. Was it possible that this man was in fact the master architect of Comexo City? "What do you make of it, Birch?" Pixler asked his companion. The man came to Pixler's side. He was fully 2.5 feet taller than his boss, and despite the insipid, functional cut of the pale suits that they were wearing, he wore his with a curious elegance. "I've been going through Wilsberger's Flora and Fauna of the Islands, and..." "There's no entry for a giant moth," Pixler said, gently patting his quiff to be sure it hadn't lost its shape. "No." "I'm not surprised," Pixler said. "It's my opinion that this thing is made by magic. Look at the coloring flowing out of it, Birch. It was a conjuration that made this, and a powerful one." Pixler smiled. "It's going to take time to root all of the magic out of these islands. We've got a lot of books to burn and a lot of spirits to break." Candy listened to the man speaking of the book burning and spirit breaking with a little smile of anticipation on his face. And it made her shudder. So this was the philosophy of Rojo Pixler, the great architect of Comexo City. It made grim listening. I don't want them going to their local shamans and witch doctors for their healing and their revelations. I want them coming to us, to me. If people want to taste magic, let it be our magic, sanitized, systemized. Hallelujah, Birch said. You're not mocking me, are you? Pixler snapped, reeling around on the man, his finger jabbing in the man's face. Birch raised his hands in surrender, the tablet flipping from his hands. Good Lord, no, absolutely not, sir. Pixler laughed aloud. A joke, Birch, a joke, he said. What? Said Birch, his expression empty. Where's your sense of humor? Mr. Suspicion said. Oh, a joke. Come on, Birch, lighten up. I trust you. Birch bent down and picked up the tablet he had dropped. As he did so, he shot Pixler a glance that the boss man didn't see, but Candy did. It spoke volumes. Under Birch's loyal manner lay a deep-seated contempt for his employer. Write this down for me, Birch, Pixler said. I want to announce an amnesty on all books of magic. If they're turned over to us in Comexo City for burning in the next 30 days, I will personally guarantee that whoever hands the books over will be immune from prosecution. With respect, Birch said, there are no laws, sir, forbidding the practice of magic outside Comexo City, and, again, with respect, I think it would be very hard to get any of the island councils to agree to put such a law into effect. What if we told these 2-bit counselors that they could never have any further dealings with Comexo unless they did create such a law? Pixler said. That might work, Birch said, but what about the big players? The Carrion family has a vast magical library here, probably the largest in the islands. How do we get them to give that up? I'll find a way, Rojo said, his manner oozing confidence. I always find a way. You know me. Wait, Birch said softly. What is it? Would you mind, sir? Birch said, handing the glowing tablet over to his boss. What's the problem, Birch? Pixler said. None, sir, Birch said, taking a small step away from his employer toward the corpse, then another, and then a third. Birch. At that moment, Birch's steps became long-legged dashes into the undergrowth. Too late. Candy realized that she was the target of his pursuit. She turned and started to run, but before she could get more than a yard, he had his hands on her. A spy, Pixler yelled. It's just a girl, Birch said, as he pulled Candy out of the shadows and into the blaze of light from the balloons. She complained loudly about his manhandling of her, but she had no choice in the matter. He was considerably stronger than she was, and he didn't seem to care, and that he was bruising her in the process of holding on to her. Are you our moth maker? Pixler said. Did you do that? He pointed to the dead moth, which was still in the trees despite the attempts of Doggett and his team to bring it down. She's probably one of the local tribespeople, Birch said, still holding Candy tight. Some of them are mute, I believe. Are you mute? Pixler said. No, Candy replied. Ah, that's one theory that bites the dust, Pixler said. Then who are you? Said Birch. My name is Candy Quackenbush, and for your information, I was being abducted by that thing in the trees when you brave, clever gentlemen shot it out of the skies. You could have killed me. Pixler listened to this little outburst with a mildly amused expression on his face. I think you could probably let the young lady go now, Birch, Pixler said. She may be armed, Birch said, not releasing Candy. What have you got in your hand? Doggett demanded. That squiller, Candy said, looking down. To her distress, she realized that in the last few minutes, while she was listening to the book-burning nonsense Rojo Pixler was spouting, the life had finally gone from her little squid friend. Most likely had been out of its native element too long. Let me go, she raged, digging at Birch with her elbows to get him to release her. You heard what the girl told you, Pixler said. Birch let go of Candy, but stayed within 6 inches of her in case she attempted to make a move on his boss. Shall I take that from you? Pixler said, his hands extended to receive Squiller's body. No, you can't, Candy said. I'll bury him myself. I want to say a little prayer. For a squid, my lord? Said Birch. Are you a primitive lot on this island? Don't be so judgmental, Birch, said Pixler. His voice had become softer. My sister Philomena used to bury all of her pets in the back garden when we were young. We had quite a little cemetery back there. I used to dig the hole, and she'd write a little prayer. These little rituals are important. Where are you from, child? A long way away, Candy said. She suddenly felt a deep tremor of sadness go through her, and she wished with all her heart that she could snap her fingers and be returned to her own little backyard in Fowell Street, where she could lay Squiller to rest beside Monty the canary and several deceased goldfish, the companions of her childhood. She could feel tears not that far off, and the last thing she wanted to do was weep in front of a couple total strangers. So she said, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to bury Squiller in the woods. It's been nice meeting you, Mr. Pixler. And you? She looked at Birch. Not so nice. Well, that's plain speaking, Pixler said. We speak plainly in Minnesota. Minnesota? Said Birch. What island is that? Minnesota isn't in the ABARAT, Birch, Pixler said. You mean? Yes, said Pixler. Minnesota is in the hereafter. Leaving them in their discussion, Candy wandered off into the woods, making sure she kept well away from the area where the men were now at work under dogged supervision, bringing the dead moth down from the branches. She found a place where the dirt looked relatively easy to penetrate, and she proceeded to dig with her hands. When she got down a foot or so, she laid Squiller's little body at the bottom of the hole and threw a fistful of earth over him. She'd only been to one funeral in her life, her grandmother's, but she remembered a smattering of words from the ceremony. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, she murmured, and then she improvised. Thank you for your company, Squiller. I'm sorry you're gone. I'm going to miss you. She began to push the remaining dirt over the squid's body as she spoke, covering it completely. I hope wherever you've gone, it's a place you want to be. She sniffed hard, swallowing her salty tears. It wasn't just Squiller's impromptu funeral that had brought them on. It was the thoughts of home and of the great distance that lay between this place and the streets of Chickentown. Now I'm alone, she said to herself. No, you're not. She glanced over her shoulder. Rojo Pixler was standing close by. This is a private funeral, she said to him. Oh, I'm sorry, he said, sounding genuinely contrite. I really didn't wish to intrude on your grief. It's just that back there you said something very interesting. I did? When you told me that you came from Minnesota. Oh, that. Yes, that. Were you telling the truth? Why? Because I would be extremely thankful to you if you would lead me back there. To Minnesota? Yes, to Minnesota. Candy looked incredulous. You wouldn't like that, she said. Oh, but I think I would. I'm always looking for new markets for the Comexo Kid and his panacea. Candy didn't reply. She finished covering up Squiller and gently patted down the earth. Pixler had meanwhile squatted beside her. Here, he said. He made a small cross of 2 pieces of twig tied together and the length of grass. Candy was a little taken aback by the simple gentility of the gesture, but then she thought, when he's trying to be civil... he's trying to be civil. So she took the cross from Pixler and pushed it in the soft earth at the head of the grave. Thank you, she said. No problem. I want us to be friends. What's your name again? Candy Quackenbush. Candy, I'm Rojo. I won't beat around the bush. The fact that you've come from the hereafter is of the greatest possible importance to me. I don't see why, said Candy. It's not as interesting there as it is here. Well, maybe not to you, Rojo replied, but you're used to it. To me, it's new territory to explore, a new frontier. I've done all I can here. I need somewhere new to conquer, Candy said, standing up and looking down at Pixler. No, he protested mildly. Do I look like a conqueror? I'm a civilized man, Candy. I built cities. And burned books, she said. He looked pained to have been caught in a lie. Before he could come back with another response, she had more to say, and shoot down defenseless creatures. I didn't see you being carried by the moth, I swear. If I had, I wouldn't have fired. There was a rider on the moth, too. Really? Yes, his name was Mendelssohn Shape. He fell to his death. Rojo looked genuinely distressed. That's a tragedy. I'm completely culpable. In the heat of the hunt, I did something I shouldn't have done. Did you know him? The rider, I mean. If he has family, I'll make whatever reparations I can. I don't know if he has any family. He worked for someone called Christopher Carrion. Carrion? Really? Rojo glanced away from Candy toward the moth, which Doggett's men were seconds away from bringing down out of the trees. So that was Carrion's handiwork, eh? He said, his voice touched by awe. Very impressive. Candy followed his gaze towards the moth. Light and color were still pouring from it, dissipating into the air, illuminating the trees blue and purple and yellow and red. So tell me, Pixlr said, what were you doing, taking a ride on Carrion's moth? If you must know, I wasn't taking a ride. Shape abducted me. Abducted? Yes. Rojo gave a little self-satisfied smile. Well then, he said, I saved you from some very serious trouble. You wouldn't have wanted to be Carrion's prisoner, believe me. He has the morals of the very devil, that man, and if he ever found a way to get over to the hereafter... It's not that difficult, Candy said. To get there, perhaps, but to gain a foothold? He passed his hand through his hair. That's the challenge. Please listen to me, Candy. I truly believe we could be very useful to one another. Candy wasn't convinced. How? She said. Think it through. I'm in need of somebody with a good working knowledge of the hereafter, and you need somebody here to protect you from Carrion. I don't need protection. Oh, my dear, you don't have the first clue on what this man will do to you if he ever takes it into his head to be cruel. He is the law unto himself, believe me. Even so, I don't care to tell you about the hereafter, Candy said, backing away from him. Oh, now don't be difficult, Pixlr said. I realize we met under difficult circumstances, but I'm genuinely sorry about the moth. It was just an accident. It could have happened to anyone. Anyone who was out hunting, Candy said. I realize not everybody approves of it, but it relaxes me, and I have a huge collection of stuffed animals in Comexo City. 19,000 specimens, from fleas to Kefalon whales. I'd like you to see it. Some other time, maybe, Candy said. Pixlr shrugged. Believe me or not, he said, his tone hardening. I don't really care. In the end, you're going to come begging to me when Carrion's on your tail, begging me to hide you from him. Yes, well, maybe, Candy said, but right now, I prefer to take my chances. Please, Pixlr said, making one last desperate attempt to convince her. Let me bring you back to Comexo City. It's not safe yet on half these islands. The inhabitants are savages, totally uncivilized. I am not going back to Comexo City with you, and that's final, Candy said. In truth, there was little part of Candy that wanted to accept Pixlr's invitation. He was polite enough, after all. He seemed more like an ordinary human being than many of the creatures she had met on her travels, which right now she found reassuring. She was feeling very much alone and very tired. She lost count of the time that had passed since she and Mischief had plunged into the sea of Isabella. Though she'd reset her watch when Mischief had told her to, it had stopped. Now she felt the way travelers in the hereafter felt when they'd traveled around the world and their body clocks had become confused. Her thoughts were sluggish and her limbs ached. The thought of going with Pixlr to some civilized place where the showers were probably hot and beds were surely soft was not without its attractions. But then she'd effectively be in Pixler's control, wouldn't she? In his city, as his guest, or his prisoner. I can see you're having second thoughts, Pixler said, reading the confusion on Candy's face. You're thinking about a comfortable place to lay your head, no doubt. Candy tried to block out his seductions by concentrating on something else, and she turned her attention to the moth. Off between the trees, Doggett's teams was close to bringing down the creature's body. There was much shouting and a flurry of orders. Then, sooner than any of the working men had anticipated, the moth's corpse came crashing down out of the trees. As it struck the ground, it erupted in a brilliant shower of light and color. But there was something else in the substance of the creature that was also set free as it flew apart. Candy saw 4 or 5 skeletal faces rise out of the blazing remains of the moth and weave their way skyward. The spectacle didn't just draw her attention, it drew that of Pixler and Birch too. Candy seized her moment. She cautiously retreated a step, and then another, and then another. Birch and Pixler hadn't noticed. The disintegration of the moth was like a fireworks display. It claimed all of their attention. After 5 backward steps, Candy turned and ran. It didn't take her long to get to the other side of the copse, and there she paused to take a backward glance. She could see Birch and Pixler silhouetted against the brightness of the moth. By now they had both realized she had gone. They were looking around, obviously trying to locate her, but apparently they had been staring into the blaze of the disintegrating moth for too long, and it was still blinding them, or perhaps darkness simply concealed her. Whatever the reason, when they looked in her direction, and then they did, they failed to see her. Pixler yelled something to Birch, who immediately went back to the balloon's gondola. He'd gone for more men. Candy thought, I'd better get out of here. She turned back to the man and the moth and surveyed the starlit terrain in front of her. Ninnyhammer was an island of gentle hills. On top of one of those hills, perhaps 2 miles from where she was standing, was a building with large dome upon it. There was a light in its windows, so if it was a house, then somebody was at home. And if it was a religious building of some kind, which the dome made her think perhaps it was, then it was open for worship, or sanctuary, which was what she needed right now. She didn't look back. Let me get this coffee. She didn't look back now at Rojo Pixler or the moth with its colors and its weaving ghosts. She simply started down the gentle slope that led away from the trees. Very soon the copse was out of sight, and the men's voices had been carried away by the wind. She was alone for the first time since she arrived on the ABARAT, and there were no hunters, no sea skippers, no Izarith, no Samuel Klepp, and no Mischief and his brothers. Just her, Miss Candy Quackenbush of Chickentown, under a heaven filled with alien stars. From somewhere deep inside her, a great and unforeseen surge of joy appeared. Out of sheer pleasure, she started to sing as she went. It wasn't a song from the hereafter that came to her lips. It was the absurd little ditty that she heard the sea skippers sing. Oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me. I used to have a hamster tree, but it was eaten by a newt, and now I have no cuddly fruit. Oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me. I used to have a hamster tree. For some uncanny reason, she remembered it perfectly, and as she thought she'd known it all her life, which was of course impossible. Yet here it was, coming to her lips as easily as some rhyme she had been taught in kindergarten. Oh well, she thought as she gave the song a full throat, there's another mystery. And content with what somewhere on the journey ahead she would find, wow. And content with that somewhere on the journey ahead, she would find the answers to that mystery, along with something to eat. She went on her way, singing of newts and hamster trees. And that concludes Chapter 23. Oh, that's cute. And she went on her way, singing of newts and hamster trees. That concludes chapter 23. Whoop whoop. Fucking have the best day.